realized I filmed this whole video talking about how excited I was about Tales of the Valiant without really giving any context for why I filmed it. And I wanted to go back and point out that I saw this Reddit post a week or two ago that talked about how at the beginning, when Black Flag Roleplaying was announced, that there was so much fanfare, that everybody was excited about it, and I was one of those people too.
Go to Kobold Press and sign up for that playtest.
And how now that it's released, there doesn't seem to be a whole lot of people talking about it. And I think that's actually true. I think there are fewer people talking about it than there should be. So I wanted to throw my voice into the mix and talk about some of the things that I'm particularly excited about seeing in this game.
When it was first announced, I was really excited about Black Flag Roleplaying because I was still pretty salty about the whole OGL mess, and I was really excited to see a product being put out that was a 5e replacement by a publisher that I really liked and respected. When the first playtest packet hit, I was admittedly a little underwhelmed. It was really close to 5e. Didn't see a whole lot of differences from what I was used to, and I felt like what was happening in the 1D&D playtest was more innovative. I felt like there were some missed opportunities to add some cool new things. But then two things happened that really changed my perspective on this new game. One, Kobold Press just kept releasing interesting new things. I'd been a little underwhelmed in the initial playtest packet, but the more they released, the more I liked things. And secondly, a lot of the things that I was really excited about in the 1D&D playtest, Wizards started to walk back on and take out of their playtest materials. And some of the things that I was excited about in 1D&D that were going away were actually included in Kobold Press's product. So let's look at 5 things about Tales of the Valiant that I'm really excited about using in my upcoming games. One, let's get this one out of the way first because it's the most obvious. Better designed monsters. When it comes to monster books, Kobold Press has been swinging for the fences for years now, and they've hit a lot of home runs. A lot of my favorite monsters from 5e come straight out of Kobold Press books, and the monsters we see in Tales of the Valiant show off a lot of the good design that we've seen from Kobold Press for quite some time. The most noticeable upgrade is how many monsters have meaningful and flavorful abilities that push them beyond the idea of just being a sack of hit points, which is an age-old complaint about 5e. Now, one of the reasons I wanted to get this out of the way first is because, yes, it's a really big deal, but also it's probably the point that's going to stand the test of time the least among the things that I'm pointing out here. D&D's designers know that their monster stat blocks in the old monster manual are an issue. And I'm assuming that the new monster manual will have plenty of upgrades that are likely to bring it into the same realm of awesomeness as Kobold Press is doing right now. Good thing that's not the only thing that sets this product apart. The next two are design elements that I was really excited about seeing in 2024 D&D, 1D&D, whatever we're calling it now, that Wizards teased in some of their playtest materials but then took away as things progressed. I don't know who was poo-pooing these ideas in the surveys that they put out, but I thought they were awesome, and I was really sad to see them back away. Standardized spell lists is one. Having arcane, divine spell lists that are available to multiple different classes, I think is a really elegant design. I think Pathfinder 2e does this really well, and I think that's one of many design elements that the 5e ecosystem could benefit from pulling from Pathfinder design. Tales of the Valiant stuck with this idea. They have an arcane spell list, a divine spell list, a primal spell list, and a weird spell list. And the half casters and third casters and so on and so forth pull from these standardized lists of spells. This fixes a couple of things that I found a little annoying about traditional 5e. One being that bards can pull from any spell list, and we're able to get somewhat overpowered spells for the level from the paladin spell list, for example. It also makes it a lot easier to set up intercompatibility between or among different slat books that you release later on down the line, especially if they contain additional classes. I also really like the idea of standardized subclass progression. I know it makes more narrative sense for certain classes to pick their subclass earlier on, say at first level like warlocks and clerics, but I really like the idea of standardizing when those choices happen, especially when you're teaching new players the game. I also really like the idea of releasing subclasses that can be taken by multiple base classes. And that gets a little more complicated when you have subclass features that are gained at different levels. I made a whole video about how excited I was about that idea, and we see where that got me. Except that I can still do that stuff with Tales of the Valiant, which is super sweet. The fourth really cool thing that I like about Tales of the Valiant is the talent system. This is a replacement for the feat system, and while it has a lot in common with feats, it essentially turns everything for Tales of the Valiant that would have been a feat into what's commonly known as a half feat, where you get a somewhat lesser ability, but you get to still add a point to an ability score. The half feats that exist in 5e all specify which ability score you get to add something to. There are a few exceptions, but for the most part, the most options that you're going to get is 2 or 3, and many of them specify just one ability score that gets that bump. The talent system just replaces one of your ability score bumps that you would get at 4th, 8th, 12th, and so on with a talent. So that other point that you can add somewhere can be placed anywhere that you would like. So you can get a combat-focused feat, but say still add that extra point to wisdom. Or vice versa, take something very focused on mental abilities, but still add your bonus point to strength or constitution. Now granted, the game's not been out very long, and the number of characters who have been built with this system is far less than what's been built with traditional 5e, but it feels like a much more cleanly designed system. Lastly, I want to talk about inspiration in 5e. Now this is a mechanic that I traditionally forgot about on a regular basis. Like, almost never awarded inspiration to players. Players almost never reward it to one another. It was essentially just overlooked and ignored. But the Tales of the Valiant replacement for this is called luck, and it's just a pool of points that you gain when you fail at something, and you get to spend those points later to either increase your rolls by a specified number, like 1 for 1, or you can spend a handful of those bonus points to re-roll a die altogether. Now, I really like this fail-forward mechanic where the more you mess up, the more likely it is that you'll be able to succeed later. That just is kind of a concession prize, I guess, for having a night where the dice just hate you, and we've all had those nights. But I think the best part about this mechanic is that you can't hoard those luck points. You are encouraged to use them. If you accumulate too many, then the pool resets to a likely lower number, and you just continue from there. But best of all, it's not a resource that the game master has to track. So players are responsible for keeping up with their luck points. And truly, I've got a feeling that I've got some players who are going to ignore that just like they did inspiration. But a diligent player who's paying attention to their resource management can gain a huge benefit from tracking this resource and turn some unlucky series of rolls back in their favor. Now, all that said, the 2024 D&D previews are starting to hit.